The airport terminal buzzed with the chaotic symphony of hurried footsteps, rolling suitcases, and muffled announcements echoing over the intercom, creating a backdrop of organized frenzy that Aaliyah Jenkins had grown accustomed to during her occasional solo travels. But today, as she navigated through the throngs of passengers toward the gate for United Airlines Flight 892 bound for Chicago, there was an undercurrent of excitement mixed with a touch of nervousness because she was heading to visit her beloved aunt who had been battling illness for months. And Aaliyah, at just 16 years old, a bright and ambitious black high school junior, with aspirations of one day becoming a doctor specializing in endocrinology, carried with her not only her backpack filled with school books and snacks, but also the essential tools for managing her type 1 diabetes, a condition she had been diagnosed with at the tender age of 8, which meant her insulin pen was always securely tucked into a small labeled case in her carry-on bag, complete with her medical ID bracelet that she wore religiously on her wrist as a silent guardian against misunderstandings. And as she boarded the plane, flashing her boarding pass to the gate agent with a polite smile, she couldn't help but feel a sense of relief knowing that her father, Captain Elias Jenkins, a dedicated and highly respected United pilot with over 2 decades of experience under his belt, was at the helm of this very flight, having arranged for her to sit in economy seat 14B, strategically positioned so that the cabin crew could easily keep an eye on her if needed. And once settled into her seat, she pulled out her phone to send a quick text to her dad saying, "Ready for takeoff. Love you," before stowing it away and adjusting her seatbelt, taking a deep breath to steady herself as the plane began to fill with other passengers, some chatting animatedly about their destinations, while others buried themselves in books or headphones to escape the pre-flight jitters. And as the aircraft doors closed and the safety demonstration commenced, Aaliyah felt the familiar rumble of the engines as the plane taxied toward the runway, her mind wandering to the fun she planned to have with her aunt once she arrived, perhaps baking cookies or sharing stories about school. But that peaceful anticipation was shattered when flight attendant Karen Reynolds, a middle-aged woman with a crisp uniform and a no-nonsense demeanor that bordered on stern, approached her row during the final checks before takeoff, her eyes immediately locking onto the insulin pen that Aaliyah had discreetly pulled out to administer a quick dose to maintain her blood sugar levels, which she did with practiced ease, having done it countless times before without issue. And Karen's voice cut through the ambient noise like a sharp knife as she demanded, "What's that device you're using there, young lady?" prompting Aaliyah to look up in surprise but respond calmly and confidently, "It's my insulin pen, I have type 1, diabetes, and this is how I manage my blood sugar. Here's my prescription label and my medical ID bracelet to confirm," as she extended her arm to show the engraved bracelet and held up the pen's clear labeling for inspection, expecting the matter to be resolved quickly as it had been on previous flights. But Karen's expression twisted into one of deep skepticism, her brows furrowing as she replied curtly, "That looks suspicious to me. We have very strict rules about unverified liquids and devices on board, and I can't just take your word for it." And before Aaliyah could even process the words or offer further explanation, Karen reached out with surprising swiftness, snatching the insulin pen from her hand, giving it a brief, dismissive inspection as if it were some contraband item. And then, in a move that left Aaliyah's heart pounding in shock and disbelief, tossed it unceremoniously into a nearby trash bin overflowing with discarded napkins, coffee cups, and snack wrappers, declaring with finality, "You'll get it back after we land if it turns out to be legitimate. But right now, I can't risk any potential issues," which sent a wave of panic surging through Aaliyah as she realized the gravity of the situation. Without her insulin, her blood sugar could spike uncontrollably during the hours-long flight, potentially leading to dizziness, confusion, or worse, a full-blown medical emergency high in the sky where help might be limited. And her voice rose in urgency as she pleaded, "Please, you can't do that. That's my medicine, my lifeline. I need it right now, and if you don't believe me, call my dad. He's the captain of this flight. But Karen merely waved off the plea with a condescending shake of her head, muttering something about nice try with the story and how security protocols didn't make exceptions for creative excuses, proceeding to radio the cockpit and TSA agents on the ground, reporting a potential security threat involving an unauthorized item that required immediate attention, all while passengers in adjacent seats shifted uncomfortably in their spots, some exchanging wide-eyed glances and whispers of, "Did she just throw away that girl's medicine?" As the plane, which had been steadily moving toward the runway, came to an abrupt halt on the tarmac, the engines whining down as the delay was announced over the intercom in vague terms about a minor issue being resolved, and in that moment, a young woman seated a few rows back named Lisa Patel, a freelance journalist with a keen eye for social injustices and a smartphone always at the ready, discreetly began a live stream on her social media account, capturing the unfolding scene with her camera angled carefully to include Alia's distressed face, Karen's unyielding posture, and the growing tension in the cabin, titling the stream "Unfair Treatment on United Flight." Attendant discards teen's medical device in hopes of shedding light on what she perceived as a clear overreach, and up in the cockpit, Captain Elias Jenkins, focused on his pre-flight checklists, received the urgent relay from his co-pilot, "Captain, there's an issue in the cabin involving a passenger with a medical device. It's your daughter, Alia," which caused Elias's stomach to twist in a knot of protective anger as he unbuckled his seatbelt without hesitation. His mind racing with concern for her well-being given her condition, and he stormed down the aisle into the main cabin, his authoritative pilot's uniform complete with epaulets and a name badge demanding instant respect from the crew and passengers alike, who parted ways as he approached, his voice booming with controlled fury as he demanded, "What exactly is going on here?" while locking eyes first with Alia, whose tears were now streaming down her cheeks in a mix of fear and humiliation, and she quickly recounted the events in a trembling voice, explaining how her insulin pen had been confiscated and discarded without warning or verification, pointing toward the trash bin where it now lay buried under rubbish, and Elias's face hardened as he turned to Karen, his tone like thunder. "You threw out her insulin? That's not just poor judgment. That's putting her life at risk, and I won't stand for it." But Karen, perhaps emboldened by her years of service or blinded by her own biases, doubled down defensively, crossing her arms and retorting, "I was following protocol, Captain. She could be faking it or smuggling something. I've dealt with all sorts of tricks in my time, and rules are there for everyone's safety," which only fueled Elias's resolve as the cabin fell into a hushed silence. Passengers leaning forward in their seats to witness the confrontation, some nodding in agreement with Elias while others filmed discreetly on their phones, amplifying Lisa's live stream that was already gaining traction with viewers commenting in real time about the injustice. And Elias, drawing on his authority as captain, declared firmly, "This flight is grounded until this matter is fully resolved, no takeoff until my daughter receives proper care," and this is addressed as he radioed for paramedics to board from the gate and demanded Karen surrender her badge immediately, signaling to the rest of the crew to prepare for a delay while TSA agents, summoned earlier by Karen, finally arrived on the scene, initially intending to escort Alia off the plane for further questioning, but upon reviewing her medical documents, prescription, and ID bracelet, they quickly realized the error and, in a poignant twist of irony that wasn't lost on anyone present, shifted their focus to escorting Karen toward the aircraft door instead, her face now flushed with a mix of embarrassment and regret as the reality of her actions set in. And as she reached the exit, Elias called out one final directive, his voice steady, but laced with moral authority. "Before you step off this plane, you owe my daughter an apology, not for your career or to save face, but because a young girl deserves basic respect and the right to her own health without question," prompting Karen to turn back, her eyes meeting Alia's for a brief, uncomfortable moment. And she murmured softly, "Alia, I'm sorry. I was wrong to act that way," to which Alia, still clutching the replacement insulin pen provided by the arriving paramedics who had rushed aboard with a medical kit, nodded quietly and replied with remarkable composure for her age, "I forgive you, but I hope you take this as a lesson to listen and verify before assuming the worst," her words hanging in the air as Karen disappeared through the door, her footsteps echoing down the jet bridge. And in that instant, the cabin erupted in spontaneous applause from the passengers, not just for the resolution but for the display of decisive leadership and human decency they had just witnessed. Many of them cheering Elias on with comments like, "Well done, Captain!" and "That's how you handle it," while Lisa's live stream surged in viewership, now trending with hashtags that captured the essence of the moment. And Elias, turning his attention back to Aaliyah, helped her gather her things before upgrading her to first-class seat 1 Ampere, where she could relax in more comfort with an empty seat beside her for added space, ensuring she was settled before returning to the cockpit to coordinate the resumption of the flight, the plane finally pushing back once more as the incident's immediate spark faded. But unbeknownst to those on board, it had ignited a larger flame of awareness and change that would soon engulf social media and beyond, transforming a routine journey into a pivotal moment of accountability and empathy in the skies. Flight 892 cut through the clouds en route to Chicago, its engines humming steadily after the unexpected delay on the tarmac, but the atmosphere inside the cabin had undergone a profound transformation from the tense standoff that had unfolded earlier, with passengers no longer just passive observers, but active participants in a shared sense of solidarity and relief, many of them stealing glances at Aaliyah Jenkins, now comfortably seated in first-class seat 1 Ampere, where her father, Captain Elias Jenkins, had upgraded her for the remainder of the journey, ensuring she had ample space to monitor her blood sugar levels with the replacement insulin pen provided by the paramedics, and as she adjusted her seat and took a sip of water offered by a sympathetic flight attendant who had stepped in to replace Karen Reynolds, Aaliyah couldn't help but feel a mix of exhaustion and quiet empowerment, her earlier humiliation giving way to a budding realization that her voice had mattered in that critical moment. While around her, fellow travelers began approaching discreetly with words of encouragement, like the elderly couple in row 2 who leaned over to say, "Young lady, you handled that with such grace, we're proud of you. And we've got a grandson with diabetes who would be inspired by your story," or the businesswoman across the aisle who shared, "I've faced similar judgments in my line of work. It's not right. And I'm glad your dad stepped up," these small interactions weaving a tapestry of support that helped ease the lingering sting of the incident, even as Aaliyah responded with genuine smiles and thanks, her resilience shining through despite the ordeal. And meanwhile, unbeknownst to most on board, Lisa Patel's live stream, which had captured every raw detail of the confrontation from Karen's dismissive toss of the insulin pen to Elias's authoritative grounding of the flight, had erupted into a viral phenomenon, the video feed titled "Bias" on United Flight. Attendant discards black teen's medicine, rapidly accumulating views that climbed from thousands to hundreds of thousands within the first hour of flight time, shared across social media platforms where users amplified it with outraged captions like, "This is unacceptable," "United Airlines needs to be held accountable," and "Racial and medical bias in the skies? Not on my watch," sparking a cascade of hashtags such as #InsulinJustice, #FlyWithRespect, and #UnitedFail that quickly trended worldwide, drawing in influencers, activists, and everyday netizens who dissected the footage in threads and comments, some pointing out the subtle undertones of prejudice in Karen's assumptions, others praising Elias's decisive leadership as a model for how authority figures should protect the vulnerable. And by the time the plane was midway through its journey, major news outlets had caught wind of the story, with networks like CNN and MSNBC dispatching reporters to Chicago's airport for live coverage upon landing, while online forums buzzed with debates about airline protocols, medical accommodations, and the intersection of race and healthcare access. One viral tweet from a prominent civil rights advocate reading, "Aaliyah's story isn't isolated, it's a symptom of deeper systemic issues." "Time for Change," which garnered tens of thousands of retweets and likes, further propelling the narrative into the public consciousness. And back at United Airlines headquarters in Chicago, the executive suite had descended into a whirlwind of crisis management as alerts flooded in from the PR team monitoring social media sentiment, with one senior director urgently briefing CEO Scott Kirby during an impromptu video conference. "Sir, this video is exploding over 1 million views already, and the backlash is intense. Passengers are threatening boycotts, and competitors are subtly shading us online," to which Kirby, a seasoned leader known for his pragmatic approach, responded gravely, "We can't let this define us. Get me on the line with Captain Jenkins immediately, and prepare a full response strategy," leading to a direct call patched through to Elias in the cockpit via satellite phone, where Kirby expressed unwavering support, saying, "Elias, you made the right call, grounding that your daughter's safety comes first, and we're fully behind you. Expect corporate backing on all fronts." And Elias, maintaining his focus on piloting while conversing, emphasized, "This goes beyond my family, Scott. We need real changes to prevent this from happening to anyone else, starting with better training on medical devices and bias awareness," a conversation that set the wheels in motion for immediate action, as United's legal and communications teams scrambled to draft an official statement acknowledging the incident without admitting full liability, ultimately releasing it mid-flight. United Airlines deeply regrets the distressing experience faced by passenger Aaliyah Jenkins and extends our sincere apologies. This event does not align with our commitment to inclusive and safe travel for all, and we are investigating thoroughly while supporting our crew's adherence to protocols. But even as the statement hit the wires, it was met with mixed reactions online, some praising the swift acknowledgement, while others criticized it as too vague, demanding specifics on consequences for Karen and preventive measures. And indeed, within hours of the video's virality, Karen Reynolds found herself at the center of a digital storm, her name trending alongside the hashtags, as online sleuths uncovered her social media profiles, though she had quickly set them to private and shared screenshots of past posts that hinted at insensitivities, fueling calls for her dismissal, with petitions circulating that amassed thousands of signatures in record time. And by the flight's descent into Chicago, the video had surpassed 5 million views, prompting United to escalate their response by announcing Karen's immediate suspension pending a full review. A decision communicated internally via an urgent memo to all employees that read, "Effective today, we are reinforcing our zero-tolerance policy on actions that compromise passenger well-being. This incident underscores the need for empathy and verification in all interactions, and as the plane touched down smoothly at O'Hare International Airport, a throng of reporters awaited at the gate, their cameras flashing and microphones thrust forward. As Elias and Aaliyah deplaned together, Elias shielding his daughter slightly from the glare, while addressing the press with poise, "My priority was and always will be my daughter's health and dignity. What happened today highlights flaws in how we handle medical needs, and I trust United will lead the way in fixing them," with Aaliyah adding softly but firmly, "I just wanted to feel safe on this flight, like everyone else deserves to. Thank you to those supporting me," her words resonating deeply and humanizing the story further, which led to an outpouring of media interviews requests that evening from local affiliates to national shows, eager to feature the father-daughter duo as symbols of resilience against injustice. And in the wake of the landing, United doubled down on their commitments by unveiling preliminary reforms during a hastily arranged press conference at their headquarters, where a spokesperson detailed the launch of the Health Access app, a innovative digital tool allowing passengers to pre-register their medical conditions and devices upon booking, making the information instantly available to crew members via secure tablets. thus eliminating the guesswork that had plagued Aaliyah's experience and additionally mandating 30 hours of enhanced training for all flight attendants, focused on recognizing legitimate medical aids, cultural sensitivity, and de-escalation techniques, measures that were met with applause from advocacy groups like the American Diabetes Association, whose representatives, including Dr. Maria Gonzalez, who had been a passenger on the flight and witnessed the events firsthand, publicly endorsed the changes while announcing their own initiative to collaborate with airlines on standardized guidelines, stating in a joint statement, "Aaliyah's courage has illuminated a path forward. We're committed to ensuring no passenger faces such barriers again," and as the viral outcry peaked with the video reaching 20 million views by night's end, other airlines such as Delta and Southwest quietly reached out to United for copies of the new protocols, signaling a ripple effect across the industry that promised broader accountability, while passengers from Flight 892 shared their own accounts online. From the applause in the cabin to personal reflections on witnessing the grounding, adding layers of authenticity to the narrative and preventing it from being dismissed as isolated, instead framing it as a collective call for reform that united diverse voices in demanding better from the skies. And through it all, Aaliyah found herself at the heart of this storm, fielding messages of support from strangers worldwide, including celebrities who amplified her story, turning what could have been a forgotten mishap into a powerful catalyst for dialogue on equity in travel, her quiet strength inspiring a generation to speak up when faced with unfairness, as the chapter of immediate reckoning unfolded into nights of reflection and action that would shape the future of aviation. Months had passed since the pivotal events aboard United Airlines Flight 892, a period that saw Aaliyah Jenkins evolve from a frightened 16-year-old caught in a moment of profound unfairness into a poised young advocate whose story resonated across continents, inspiring countless individuals to reflect on their own encounters with systemic barriers. And now, as she stood before a packed Senate committee hearing room in Washington, D.C., dressed in a simple yet elegant blazer that her mother had helped pick out, Aaliyah's voice carried with the confidence of someone who had turned personal adversity into a force for widespread reform, testifying on matters of transportation, equity, and passenger rights with poise that belied her youth, beginning her statement by recounting not the minute details of the insulin incident which had already been dissected endlessly in media reports, but rather its emotional toll and the broader implications for those living with chronic conditions, saying, "What began as a routine flight to visit family became a stark reminder of how quickly assumptions can erode dignity, but more importantly, it highlighted the power of collective action to drive meaningful change, as evidenced by the 65% reduction in reported medical accommodation issues at United since the implementation of new protocols," her words drawing nods from senators across the aisle who had reviewed the data packets prepared by advocacy groups. And as she delved deeper into the testimony, Aaliyah shared statistics from independent audits showing how the Health Access app, initially rolled out by United in response to her case, had been adopted by over a dozen major carriers worldwide, allowing millions of passengers to seamlessly integrate their health profiles into travel plans, thereby preempting misunderstandings and ensuring that crew members had real-time access to verified information without invasive questioning, a technological leap that not only streamlined operations but also fostered a culture of trust and inclusivity in the aviation sector. And beyond the skies, the app's framework inspired adaptations in other industries, such as hospitality chains developing similar tools for hotel check-ins to accommodate guests with disabilities, or public transportation systems piloting versions for commuters with mobility aids, demonstrating how one airline's reactive innovation could cascade into societal advancements that touched everyday lives. And Aaliyah, now a freshman at a prestigious university pursuing a degree in public health with a minor in policy studies, had channeled her experiences into founding Safe Skies for All, a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating young travelers, particularly those from marginalized communities, on their rights and how to advocate for themselves during journeys, running workshops in high schools and community centers where participants role-played scenarios drawn from real-life stories, including her own, to build skills in assertive communication and documentation, and the nonprofit quickly gained traction, securing grants from foundations focused on health equity and partnering with organizations like the NAACP to address the intersecting layers of racial bias that often amplified such incidents for Black individuals and other people of color. With Aaliyah frequently highlighting in her speeches how her identity as a Black teenager likely contributed to the initial skepticism she faced, urging audiences to recognize and dismantle these implicit prejudices through education and policy reform, and her father's role in this legacy was equally transformative, as Captain Elias Jenkins, promoted to the newly created position of Director of Passenger Equity at United, spent his days traveling between hubs to oversee training programs that incorporated virtual reality simulations of diverse passenger interactions, helping crews practice empathy and proper procedures in immersive environments that reduced errors by simulating high-stress situations without real-world consequences. And Elias often collaborated with Aaliyah on joint initiatives, such as co-authoring a guidebook distributed to airlines globally on inclusive aviation practices, which became required reading in flight attendant academies and was translated into multiple languages to reach international carriers, fostering a unified standard that transcended borders. And on a more personal level, Karen Reynolds, whose career had been upended by the viral exposure, embarked on a path of quiet redemption that Aaliyah herself acknowledged during a panel discussion, noting how Karen had reached out privately to volunteer at diabetes awareness events organized by Safe Skies for All, sharing her side of the story as a cautionary tale to illustrate the human cost of unchecked biases and the importance of continuous learning, a gesture that Aaliyah met with grace, publicly stating, "Everyone has the capacity for growth." Karen's willingness to contribute now shows that true accountability involves not just consequences, but also positive steps forward, which humanized the narrative and shifted public discourse from punitive outrage to restorative justice, encouraging online communities to focus on solutions rather than perpetual vilification. And the broader societal ripples continued to expand, with educational institutions incorporating Aaliyah's case into curricula for business ethics courses at universities, where students analyzed the economic impacts of reputational damage versus the long-term benefits of proactive reforms, or in high school social studies classes that used the viral video now archived in digital libraries, with over 40 million cumulative views across platforms, as a springboard for discussions on digital activism and the role of bystanders like Lisa Patel, whose initial live stream had ignited the firestorm. And Lisa herself parlayed the experience into a successful career pivot, producing a documentary series titled Voices from the Aisle that profiled other passengers who had documented injustices in travel, from accessibility challenges for wheelchair users to language barriers for non-English speakers, each episode weaving in expert commentary from psychologists on the effects of microaggressions and policymakers on legislative fixes, garnering awards at film festivals and streaming on major platforms to educate a wider audience. And in the healthcare realm, Dr. Maria Gonzalez, the endocrinologist passenger who had offered support during the flight, led efforts through the American Diabetes Association to establish national standards for medical device verification in public spaces, influencing not just airlines but also event venues, schools, and workplaces to adopt badge systems or apps that quickly authenticated health needs, reducing stigma and streamlining access, with pilot programs showing marked improvements in patient confidence when traveling or attending large gatherings. And Aaliyah's university research further amplified this, as her freshman thesis explored the integration of artificial intelligence in bias detection for service industries, proposing algorithms that could flag potentially discriminatory interactions in real time through wearable tech or app integrations, a project that earned her a scholarship from a tech foundation eager to fund innovative solutions at the intersection of health and ethics. And during family gatherings, Elias would often reflect on that fateful day, telling Aaliyah over dinner. Grounding the flight wasn't just about protecting you, it was about setting a precedent that echoes in every policy change we've seen since, to which she would reply with a thoughtful smile, and it taught me that strength comes from turning vulnerability into advocacy, Dad. We're proof that one family's stand can uplift so many others. Their bond deepened by the shared journey that had tested and ultimately fortified them. And as Safe Skies for All expanded its reach with chapters in multiple cities, hosting annual summits where survivors of similar experiences shared testimonials and brainstormed new initiatives, the organization influenced legislative efforts, including a bill introduced in Congress to mandate federal oversight of airline medical policies, with Aaliyah's testimony playing a key role in garnering bipartisan support. And internationally, her story crossed oceans, inspiring similar reforms in Europe, where the European Aviation Safety Agency cited her case in updating guidelines for crew training, or in Asia, where budget carriers adopted the Health Access app model to cater to growing diabetic populations, proving the global universality of her message. And in quieter moments, Aaliyah would scroll through the thousands of messages from supporters' parents, thanking her for giving their children hope, teens sharing how her example encouraged them to speak up in school, or even airline employees pledging to be more vigilant, each one a reminder that her 20-minute ordeal had blossomed into a movement enduring far beyond the headlines, fostering a world where travel symbolized freedom rather than fear. And as she prepared for her next speaking engagement at a youth leadership conference, Aaliyah concluded her Senate testimony with a powerful call to action that encapsulated the legacy: change isn't inevitable. It's forged by those willing to document, demand, and drive it forward. Let's ensure every journey, in the air or on the ground, honors the dignity of all who embark. Her words met with standing ovation from the committee and spectators alike, marking not an end but a continuation of the transformative wave she had helped unleash. A legacy woven into the fabric of progress, where individual courage illuminated paths for collective equity, inspiring generations to view challenges not as endpoints, but as opportunities for profound, lasting impact that redefined fairness in the modern world.